understand this, but this does.
Yeah, I'm sorry, guys. I forgot to record it. Damn it, I was remembering it, but then I forgot. But anyway, so usually we use selector to reach out to our state variables. And that's cool. And we know that use selector accepts a single function, right? Which we call a selected function. Basically, selected function, we create it like this. These are the selected functions. A selected function, okay, is a function that takes the entire Redux store. Let me just read out from here, guys, using not this one, fundamentals, UI, and React right here. Use selector right here, okay? The first React Redux hook that we'll look at this use selected hook, which lets your React component read data from the Redux store. Use selector accepts a single function, which we call a selected function. A selector is a function that takes the entire Redux store state as its argument. Entire Redux store, okay? Now, if you don't use inside this create slice, then it's just taking this initial state. But if you are not using like this, right? If you are using over here as state anonymous function, then it will grab the entire this right here, this state. If you put this anonymous function as state, that state is the global, takes the entire Redux store. But inside create slice, it's not an entire Redux store. It is just initial state that belongs to the counter itself. Redux store state as its argument reads some value from the state and returns that result. Right? For example, state that to-dos and etc. Now, when we try to use this selected functions, we don't have to do this one right here. Okay, we can actually, if it was array of objects, then you can send out the filtered version. Okay, the filtered version, like state that count or state that the to-dos that filter blah blah. It will definitely return the result. But again, use selector. So selectors can return values from the Redux store state and also return derived values based on that state as well. Yeah, right here. Derived values meaning is that let's assume that we had to-dos. Select to-dos and state that to-dos, okay? To-dos. Now we would like to filter, okay? And to-do if the to-do that completed, okay? Instead of returning the to-dos itself, we can definitely return the completed version on the to-dos that are completed. This is the derived. This is the derived state of the state, okay? That's what it says. Derived, the value is based on that state as well. That's what it means. Just keep that in mind.
Azamat, the quick question. When we are destructuring inside of our slice that actions, these actions like the increment, decrement, get number, these actions, what we have inside of our reducers, right?
Yes. Yeah.
But that information, what we have inside of our initial state, we don't need to destructure them, right? For example, the last time, when we did the project with the Confi, we had the featured products, this initial state, the products itself. We didn't destructure them since we are not using every. We are just using them, but it's not the function, right? Is that correct to understand? Instead of our actions, it's only the functions. Instead
It's
of
only,
yes, when we're destructuring, it's only the functions like increment,
actions,
decrement.
only the functions. Yes, actions are only the functions.
But if you have something inside of initial state, like the featured products, for example,
Yes.
we are not needed to destructure them as
No,
actions.
we were just reaching out to the featured product like this, right? Select featured products, state that featured products. and then using the use selector.
So when we use state, it's also could be the initial state, but or the modified state, right? Like in
Yes,
state.
exactly.
Okay,
So,
makes sense.
so now we said that the store contains dispatch and get state. Now get state function, okay, get state function returns the whole store, what we have inside our store state. Okay, so let's go back over here. Now if I dot console.log store that get state. I'm going to just copy paste over here and save it. Okay. Now store that get state contains, as you guys can see, counter to dos. Right, counter to dos. They're coming from right here, from this reducer right here. This counter, right, refers to this counter reducer that is coming from counter slice. And this one refers to the slice. Okay, so as you guys can see, this counter is basically after we are running this counter reducer, this reducer is basically returning the next state actually. Okay, initial loading, it's going to return the initial state because initial state contains these guys right here. Okay, but next time we update something, right? Next time we update something, now this store will return the next state. Okay. Yeah, it's not returning right now, but it will return. Okay.
The next state, you mean the new state, the updated state, right?
Updated state. Yes, exactly. Let me come down here. Oh, I have to import the store first. Yeah. Okay. Now store.get state. We're console logging inside over here. Both of them are same. Okay. And if I increase one, now I'm getting another. Now this guy right here, count one. Right? Counter has the next state. All right, store.get state. Every time I click something, it is getting this next state right here, count 6, and refers to the 6 right here. Now, as I said, similarly that we reach out to our state variables like this, we can basically reach out to the state variables with a store.get state. Okay, so constant count is equal to store.get state, right? It's returning an object. And from that object, I have to reach out to the counter object dot counter dot count. Save it. All right. Number is not defined. Oh, okay. I'm using the number. Okay, so let me just use the number over here for now. Because I'm not using use selector. That's why it's just select number is not defined. That one is also removed. Cool. Okay. So now this one is just using use selector. Okay. This one is using use selector. But this count is actually getting the count number over here, 0. One second, guys. Okay. Now, this is actually, if I put right here in my count as a number 10, now, you guys right here, 10. Because we are inside my counter component, we are, this way is directly accessing the state from the Redux store, right? Store.get state, we are directly accessing the state. The thing is that, the thing about this store.get state is this approach will not trigger a re-render when the state changes, because React does not know it needs to re-render the component. Okay, this one is basically directly updating the state. Now, if I click right here, see, now my number is updated. My number is updated. However, React is not re-rendering it. React is not re-rendering it. Of course, I don't have access to it, but the next state contains, right? Our store contains that number. What we can do here, we can definitely come over here and check it out our Redux. Counter increment. Okay, and this one will show us the last version of our state. Type is undefined. Okay, action, counter increment, state. Yeah, we're not clicking any button there right now. Action. So if I click any button, we are running it. So it's not reflected on the UI. It's not reflected because we know that our UI is not being updated because we are getting our state directly accessing to our store, Redux store. This will not re-render. So the React components that use Redux, they should always subscribe to state changes, right? They should always subscribe to state changes, meaning that they need to constantly talk to the state changes. As soon as the state changes, our React components will re-render and the state will be reflected on the UI. That's how we see it, okay? So under the hood, use selector right here. Now, this one would work fine, but count doesn't work. But this guy right here, you see that right here? 37 is showing because this use selector for number is updating this one. And as a result, our component re-renders and I'm getting the next count for my store. Now, if I click this increase, I'm clicking right now. I'm my counter is increasing it, but I'm not seeing it because of the fact that we are directly accessing our count with store.getState. React is not re-rendering our components. But if I click this button for changing this number, use selector is under the hood, ensures that component re-renders whenever the relevant part of the state changes. Directly accessing the store using store.getState bypasses this mechanism, right? It will bypass this mechanism. So if it bypasses, then our component won't update the state changes. Now, I clicked multiple times, my state is updated, right, under the hood, but it's not reflected on the UI. But as soon as I click this multiply by above, 73, okay? So how can we subscribe to our manually, right? Use selector is automatically subscribes under the hood because that's why we have this hook. This use dispatch and use selector are a very useful hook. But what happens if I don't want to use selector? The old traditional way, we have to subscribe to the store state. Okay, so to do that, over here we have to do constant count. Set count is equal to and use state. Okay, comes from React itself. And for this guy right here as an initial value, we can use this guy over here. Okay, use state, store.getState, counter count. And now this count is 0. Okay, this count is 0. I will just keep this guy over here and count over here. Now I can delete this guy right here. All right. So now, in order to subscribe, I can use effect. All right, use effect, and we'll just put empty array. Now inside here, I can do store that subscribe. Right, the store was returning dispatch, get state, and at the same time subscribe. Now this is old way, guys, right? But now we have useSelector that can do the whole thing. But if we would like to do without the useSelector, we have to subscribe to the store. Now this subscribe will accept, right? Will accept an anonymous function. Inside our anonymous function, we can do set count. Okay, set count and put this store that gets state that counter count again. Store that gets state that counter count again. Right? Anytime you are subscribing to some sort of external API service, or it can be internal if you are subscribing, right? Use effect need something like unsubscribe if whenever our component unmounts it, right? Now you guys can tell from set timeout, set interval, in order to avoid some sort of memory leaking, we were using a return value over here, right? Return value, we were returning a callback function. This callback function will be invoked whenever our counter component unmounts from the UI. Okay, so now, just like in set timeout, we had the clear timeout and clear interval. Of course, we're not going to use it. What we have is constant, we can just call it unsubscribe. Okay, basically this store that subscribe will return unsubscribe function, and we can invoke that function inside our return anonymous function. So now let's try to see if we can definitely update our state variables. Here we go. Now we are subscribed to our global store state. And because of the fact that we are subscribing it, right, we are getting the next state over here and putting it to the count, and count just updates our UI. Same thing for this guy, and same thing for this guy. But of course, instead of writing this whole lot of code under the hood, what we can use? useSelector. useSelector is there for us to utilize. Pretty simple, right? Count, that's it. Use, select, count. All right, and that's it. Single line of code instead of multiple lines of code. All right, any questions?
Just to remember, we use useSelector to use our actions, the dispatch to use our functions.
Exactly, yes. useSelector to use our selector functions. Okay, we're basically reaching out to the states, and to dispatch we use actions from our counter slice, and these are actions are basically everything generated by create slice. Yeah, this create slice, the actions are generated out of these reducers, but the selectors is just the selectors.
Okay, useSelector to get the information from our state.
Yes.
Dispatch is to use the functions inside of our actions.
Yes.
Just to remember, okay.
Exactly. So, where's my thing? Like, oh, here. Use selector is right here. Use selector. Oh, get this deposit amount from the state. Yes. Okay. Now dispatch. Increase this deposit amount. We're dispatching an action. Yeah. See action. It says action. Action comes to the reducer. Selects a reducer, right, and gets the initial value or previous state, and then runs this the specific reducer based on the dispatching type. Right? These reducers right here, guys, one of them is counter, one of them is to-dos, one of them is users, blah, blah, blah. These are slices. Okay, these are slices. Use hook, Redux store, provider, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, use selector, data counter. Yeah. Cool. So to be honest, that is all what I had for today. In the next class, right? In the next class, we will learn how to implement async calls in Redux setup. It's a little bit trickier, right? I wanted to teach you guys today that asynchronous thing, but you guys still need to practice a lot on this Redux because async is still really confusing. And there's two ways to implement or to handle asynchronous code. All right. So one of them is create async thunk, and the other one is to use RTK query right here. Redux toolkit query. This is the second option. Okay. Create API, blah blah blah. But in an old way, async logic and data fetching was done by create async thunk. Right here, create async thunk API to manage async calls. Okay. It says so far all the data we've worked with has been directly inside of our React client application. Yes. In our application, we had all the data inside our client application. Okay, so slices, we've been keeping our initial state, blah, blah, blah. However, most real applications need to work with data from a server by making HTTP API calls to fetch and save items. Okay, and definitely we'll see in the next class how can we implement, and this is going to be like this, something like this. Previously, we didn't have this middleware, right? So what we can do here is force initially state, yep. When we deposit $10, we dispatch event handler to the store, right? But right in the middle right here, we're going to include middleware. And that middleware will reach out to the API, okay? And as soon as it gets the data, it will dispatch. Okay? Request, yes. From the server, we get the response. Yes, from the middleware, action comes down here, gets the initial state and runs this reducer, and state will be updated and shown in the UI. All right, thunks and async logic. What's the meaning of thunk, guys? Who knows what's the meaning of thunk?
Meaning of what? Thunk?
Yes.
I don't know.
Thunk, the word thunk is a programming term that means a piece of code that does some delayed work. That's something like a set timeout. It delays something, right? It delays the code. So the thunk. I don't know why they come out with a thunk, but yeah, it's a piece of code that does some delayed work, basically API calls or something like that, right? Async code. Thunks and async.
But how you did it like this? How you got it description?
This one?
Yeah, you just toggle it. What do you?
Oh, I
You-
just grabbed it for in online, and then it's just save it as an image over here in my desktop, and then I just dragged and dropped it over here.
Okay. And you have
Drag and drop.
another display. Okay, I get you now.
Yes.
I was thinking, what was the magic was happening right now? I got you.
Cool. Yeah. What do you guys want to do now? Do you guys want to work as a team? To be honest, I don't have anything at this point.
I don't know. I guess we can just like we have some stuff with the Maxa to figure out how to do with the internship project, so we can just discuss about it with Maxa.
Yep.
Cool. You want me to open up a breakout room? I can sometimes join back and to see what you guys doing.
Okay. No problem.
It's actually 6:25. Or do you guys mind if I just exit the room and assign someone as a co-host?
Yep. It's also good.
Cool.